And so live from broadcasting now to you this is our welcome to your guest show in this year, which me live on this year broadcasting coverage on television on channel 30. We are finished to be the third day in the month of July 2026. Of course, it is playing cat and ball. Because this program, as you know, it always starts with data analysis and gather interviews and news and protocols happening in the country. I
am Esther Sako. Our quote of the day is from British statesman Winston Churchill, and it says, "Success is not final. It is the courage to continue that counts." I go again, British statesman Winston Churchill, and it says, "Success is not final. It is the courage to continue that counts."
Of course, for you, I still hear that is a food for thought. Because some people feel to be successful is the ultimate. But according to British statesman Winston Churchill, that's just the start of greater things. Because from my understanding, you can be successful today, it's another thing tomorrow. So you have to be mindful of that. Coming up in the program this morning, CSO and human rights lawyer examines ECOWAS summit and government shakeup.
Tourism Ministry welcomes Jamaica's visa waiver for Sierra Leonean citizens.
And Africa Climate Platform commends President's bill for ratifying Africa Courts Protocol. These stories are going to be trashed in the next 55 minutes. The program is Good Morning Sierra. Stay to us as always.
Live on the Sierra Leone Broadcasting Corporation. You can be part of the conversation by sending your text message to the number displayed on your screen, or send a comment on our Facebook page, SLBC.SL. Sometimes also usher in a guest in the program. The outcome of the 69th Ordinary Session of the ECOWAS Authority of Heads of State and Government, along with President Julius Maada's recent cabinet reshuffle, continue to generate national debate. While the ECOWAS summit focused on regional peace, security, democracy, and economic integration, many have described the cabinet reshuffle as long overdue. Well, joining us this morning is a civil society activist and human rights lawyer, Victor Lantinakoma, to examine the benefits, challenges, and the implication of these developments. Good morning and welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me.
So we'll start the conversation with the outcome of the ECOWAS summits. What does it mean for Sierra Leone as a civil society organization?
So indeed, it means a lot. It means that actually the country is set in a trajectory that leads to further development, and that is why we as civil society believe we commend His Excellency the President for the bold step he took to make sure that the summit is held here. Maybe after a long time, many years after the OAU, we have never had this opportunity to see, heads of state come into this country to have such a dialogue. If you look at the outcome of the summit, and that's, for me, this is what we should be busy talking about, instead of minor things that came out from the conference. For instance, everybody's talking, the president lost his position as a chairmanship, for which, in fact, that's not even correct, because the position is restitutional. Let's look at issues around the energy sector. This was discussed. Huge chunks of money were committed, right? That's right, starts to benefit. We all saw the story. And of course, you look at issues around labor, which we all are concerned. ECOWAS is still concerned that, of course, Sierra Leone needs to have, what it deserves us as a country. They will be looking into that. The Commission is planning to also send a team to look at all of these things, right? You look at also the eco currency, which was also discussed. Already 4 or 5 countries are already qualified to start implementation by 2027. And a host of all other things. You look at political reconciliations, right? We also, the former president was in that meeting. We saw how it should be to us. He felt so good, felt proud that the Israelis could also embrace him again. All of these are the magnanimous decisions by His Excellency the President, and that's what we should be talking about. But you know, we other Israelis are busy talking about minor things. You know, that actually the general public, what they are supposed to hear about, what they are supposed to know about, people are not much discussing that. For us, I think it has given confidence to development partners. It has given confidence to investors, right? To do business with a country. We all know over the years how the country has been. Political tension, you know, the economy and all the rest of it. But this conference gave an opportunity, you know, for investors to come back, have confidence in the country so that they will invest. We had, in fact, by next month or the other months before December, they will be having another investors meeting here, where for the first time some people had the opportunity to see people like Dangote. These are prominent top tycoon business people to come into this country. That was a confidence to investors to say, you know what, I think we can continue to do business with the country, with Sierra Leone. So this is why I think as Israeli, as civil society, we need to be talking about this instead of just pulling down minor things that are happening. But again, if you look at the other end, for me, I think it's only the president that is left to worry. All of these things, where are the cabinet ministers, parastatals, where are the public sector? And that's why for us, having observed all of what is happening, I saw, we listened yesterday, the ministers came together, appreciated the president, but honestly speaking, to be very honest with you, a good number of ministers, both ministers and deputy ministers, deserve to go now, right? And that's why the citizens are calling for the president at least to massively review his cabinet and the public sector institutions, because, you know, anywhere you go in this part of Freetown, Israel, everywhere now, everything is about money. Every office you go, every public sector, even job that is supposed to be done by them, if you don't give money, if you don't give the public is tired, they are fed up about all of these things. So I think it's about time the president to act toughly, right, for those non-performing ministers, and the public know them. You and I know them, right? Some of them is just window dressing they are doing, and a good number of them are now busy forming camps, forming coalitions, because they know by next year no effective governance system. So everybody is now looking who is going to be my next.
So just before we get there, let's come back home to the review of the outcomes of the just compared ECOWAS media summit. Of course, a lot of takeaways for not just Sierra Leone, but West Africa region, you know, because this is an organization that has positioned itself for regional integration, security and stability of the community. Of course, it is no gainsaying that the regional bloc is so much grappling with security insurgencies across the regional bloc, and then, like in the words of the outgoing chairman, President Leone, that this doesn't mean that if, especially for the withdrawing nations, if they are withdrawing their participation at ECOWAS level, it doesn't mean that their insurgencies they have to grapple with cannot affect us that are still within the regional framework. What does this mean? Because this is a situation whereby Sierra Leone is no longer deciding, or stakeholders are not really sitting on the table discussing the fate of Sierra Leone, but Sierra Leone is discussing the fate of other West African nations. What does that really mean for us as a nation?
Yeah, what does that mean is that, you know, as a country, as Sierra Leone is moving to that development trajectory, you know, if you listen to the statement made by President Mahama,
yes,
he said we need to move now beyond conference halls. We need to move beyond what you call speeches. Let's go into actions. Let's go into the communities.
I was also here by the Guinean leader.
Exactly. Let's go into the communities. The promises are many for politicians and the likes. Let's go now into actions, fulfillment, that kind of thing. And honestly, that's the reason why we think one individual person cannot do it alone. The president himself cannot do it alone. He needs a team. The ministers, the directors, the permanent secretaries, and all of them need to work together to make sure that aspiration is actualized, right? That's the first that we need. But if you have other segments who are busy, you know, having their own different thinking and ideas, then it's a challenge. The president will not succeed in all of these things. this has sent a very good signal to the country, like you said, right? Again, other countries, for instance, if you look at those other countries that have worked out the military, what are they saying? They are saying we are tired with promises. Okay. We want to deliver. We want to give to the people because the people believe in us, they trust us. Okay. We voted for these leaders. We give them power. But at the end of the day, the people are abandoned. Nobody cares. The masses, suffering masses, nobody's paying attention. And so, even to the president, people don't have the guts to tell the president that, sir, this is not happening here, good and that kind of. Everybody is what the local man called the belly business. Sir, everything is perfect, everything. We need to speak to the president. We need to tell the president the actual fact, the truth. What's happening good, what's not happening good. And for us, honestly, we are not saying we are generalizing the story. Yeah. There are good ministers, there are good deputy ministers who are really, honestly, the public know about them. But there are others who are just out there, honestly, I concur and support. The public is tired, is fed up with this type of people. So, right? I think that's what we are saying here.
So, Victor, do you think since the inception of ECOWAS, they have lived up to expectation? Because you made mention of the statements that were made by the ministers. They are beautiful policies, they sign communiques, but when it comes to implementation, there's a challenge. And now Leone hosted this particular authority of heads of state, and they also made commitment as to tackling some of these challenges faced, be it security issues or economic issues. Do you think ECOWAS has lived up to expectations since its inception?
So, you know, one thing I always say, and I'll continue to say, ECOWAS being a body. Yes. But there are others who are just there to just enrich themselves, who are just there to say, we concur, we support. They have nothing absolutely good to deliver to this nation, to the people. Yes, like we said, we need good institutions, but the institutions themselves cannot operate without the leadership. It is the leaders who actually lead these institutions that should be able to demonstrate their leadership to take those institutions forward. That is what the president has just done. As the leader, he has taken this nation, right, to another higher height to make sure that Sierra Leone is put on the map of the development trajectory. That is why he needs now a formidable team, right? But this team that is there, right, we don't know. Elections are just coming. This has been the habit. Once elections are coming, everybody is now looking who is going to be the next flag bearer. They are meeting, in different quarters and that kind of thing. I think that the president needs to think about that and say, you know what, let me have a new team that will take me into 2020.
Our country status in the program is lawyer Victor Lassina, human rights defender, and of course a civil rights activist. We continue the program. We now move to another issue in the program. Jamaica's decision to grant visa fluency to citizens of Sierra Leone and 15 other African countries is being welcomed as a significant milestone for tourism, trade and cultural cooperation. The Ministry of Tourism and Cultural Affairs says the move is strengthening people-to-people exchanges, expand tourism opportunities, and deepen diplomatic relations between Sierra Leone and the Caribbean. But to discuss the significance of this development and what it means for Sierra Leone's tourism sector, we've been joined by the head of Public Affairs and Communication at the Ministry of Tourism and Cultural Affairs in the person of Emmanuel Tui. Good morning, Mr. Tui. Welcome to the program.
Thank you very much, and thank you for having me this morning.
Always a pleasure having you on the show. All right, of course, take us ahead on. Of course, you saw the smiles you posed when you made mention to the ministry taking the president on, of course, some of the inroads you made during the mid-year summit of ECOWAS. But let's stick to why you are here for today. This is a welcome news for Sierra Leone. Jamaica opening its doors to Sierra Leone citizens and dozens of other African nations. Why is it so?
Well, like you said, and from the ministry perspective, it's a welcome news because before visa was issued at the free level based on bilateral cooperation and bilateral agreement within the two countries to diplomats and that of civil servants, with diplomatic and service passports. But now it has been open to citizens in this country. Similarly, it is reciprocal. That means Jamaica is doing same, Sierra Leone is doing same to Jamaican citizens, but also taking into considerations the terms and conditions for such a movement in terms of tourism. visits, meaning you have to be vetted by the other country to see that you are not a criminal, and to ensure that you have a valid passport, you're Sierra Leonean, and you have the necessary resources that will sustain your stay in both countries. So we should not that should not be devoid of what we are talking about for this visa issue. So our role is to also educate our citizens in both nations to understand that in as much as it is now a free entry visa, but there are certain conditions you have to fulfill with a view that visa can be issued to you without any form of payment. So it's a welcome news, and this has also expanded our horizon in terms of tourism. You may recall quite recently that Leone, among the global assessment by the World Bank, that we are now top in the sub-region in terms of tourist visits in the country. And to enhance that, I'm not forgetting that tourism also contributes greatly to the GDP of this country. And like we have that of Gambia, Zambia, Tanzania, etc. So for us to increase and not to drop at this stage, it's a welcome news, because we'll be having people from Jamaica. You recall quite recently, last year in November, we had the One Nation reggae, and Sierra Leoneans all over came over to see this reggae artist. And similarly, we're going to have it this year, so we're expecting more people. But apart from that, we expect that from research, and if you find out, there is some semblance of relationship between Jamaica and that of Sierra Leone based on the transatlantic slave trade, etc. So yes, commonalities are there, and then the honorable minister, like you mentioned, thank you very much for commending my minister for going around the hotel. But that notwithstanding, apart from the visit of the hospitality section, she's been trying to also establish bilateral relations with other nations around the world with a view that Sierra Leone can be on the map. That is our rebrand strategy. So in this case, we expect other people to come visit Sierra Leone, like Bones Island, Tiwai Island, Takugama, etc. As tourists. And then you will see, for instance, this just concluded ECOWAS 69 summit. The number of people that came in country, I think for the hospitality industry, hotels were jam-packed, and we saw transport sector also making a lot of money out of it. Local traders out of businesses selling their cultural materials, etc.
But are those part of the packages, like the Chief Minister was referring to over 1,000 Sierra Leoneans got they are jobs during this particular 6-month organization?
Yes, I'll come to that, because the tourism sector also provides job opportunity. Let me take for instance hospitality. Now with the establishment of so many hotels, you talk about 3 or 4-star hotels within Freetown. Then up country you only had guest houses or motels. But now you go to Kenema, you come to Bo, you meet first-class hotels there. And that is creating job opportunities. Let's also take the music diplomacy. Our musicians. Entertainment is part of it. Now take the film industry for instance. You have over 5,000 to 10,000 young people involved in that industry. All we need to do now is to formalize that sector with a view that at the end of the day, that creates even self-employment for producers, creative artists, etc. So it creates employment. The Chief Minister was right to mention that. And let's look at the edifice itself at Lunge. How many people, young people, were engaged for cleaning, for technical jobs around. It also creates that. So it creates job opportunity. That is part of, that's why tourism should be classed in this country as a Class A ministry, because it involves all other sectors. It's involved the transport sector, NRA. When taxes are increased, let's take you were talking about something on airport tax. When it affects tourism, and when these decisions are taken, tourism is not at that table to advocate. On the other end, then our tourists that will be coming in country will face, will be reduced as a result of taxes. when you talk about transport sector, if we don't, now you saw from...
And I just think that people are saying that many tourists that used to come to Sierra Leone, many that used to come to Sierra Leone through the Lungi International Airport now have been boycotting that we are coming to Guinea based on the airport.
I challenge you now with the $25 drop. You'll see people coming the more, because that was one challenge. Secondly, that was a discourse. That was, if you follow the communique, you'll see it was a discourse at the the ECOWAS level and even at the AU level for local transportation in Africa. With a view to addressing that, because you see the cost of flights. If you want to go to Gambia, you have to Libya, go to Morocco to Gambia. It's a long route and it costs much. Before, way back in the 80s, we used to have West Coast Airlines operating within the sub-region. These are the things the African leaders, what my brother was talking about, that they need to move now to action to address these issues. It's at that higher political level where bilateral cooperation has to be in place. There are countries with airlines, right? Morocco, Egypt, etc. So those countries have challenges also in, traveling within or shuttling within. So at higher level, the transport sector is meeting to discuss this. This will also improve on the arrival of guests or tourists within country. So this is all bordered around, to elevate our cultural sites. What do we mean? In as much as we are looking at these challenges, we need to improve on Bonds Island, because it has its own natural view, but also you can pass overnight there, but for now you can't. So we are also looking at that as one of the things that we needed to address, in as much as we have the visa free. But when people come, we need to elevate.
I wanted to ask that question, if apart from the One Nation festival, what other joint initiative do you have with Jamaica now that you are having free visa for people to come? What are these things that you showcase to them?
Like I mentioned,
said you have similar cultures.
Yeah, like I mentioned, others are coming for the historical part to identify themselves with our country. Let's look at the other aspect of it, gastronomy. Our cuisine, the food we eat. A lot of people want to come and have a taste of Sierra Leone cuisine, our menu, right? And so it's a whole program that is going to come up around December this year to see how best we can promote the Sierra Leonean products that we have, our local food. People will come for some of these things. And investors want to come into Sierra Leone and invest in the tourism sector, not only for their hospitality, but people want the fabrics that are produced here, how best we can modernize it. This is why our theme for this year is culture and creativity. How do we improve on the country clothes that was weaved and modernizing the styles? How do we make use of our local bamboo or raffia to improve and create furniture, etc. through creativity? We also want to use the new digital environment with a view to marketing Sierra Leone, because it's all part of our branding. You have your phones, you do TikTok, but there is no Sierra Leonean that I've seen going to the train museum to promote our local train that was there before, those good locations in country. So a special challenge will come up shortly where Sierra Leoneans should market our country. And when we get these stories here, it will contribute greatly to our GDP in the country.
So speaking of the visa fee that is empty for Jamaican citizens and also Sierra, is there a specific duration that a Jamaican can spend in Sierra when they are using this visa fee?
Yeah, the immigration departments in various countries determine, for instance, the consular unit. For visa, for choice visa, it does not last more than 30 days, a month. But it depends on the visitor. The visitor might say, I'm coming for 2 weeks or a week, but it does not exceed that. Anything above that, then it's another category of visa. So, and also it depends on the resources. For instance, you declare your account that I have X amount, or I'm coming to stay with a brother who is working here. So they have to look at all of that so that when you come here, you will not be stranded somehow and you have challenges in terms of money. So it depends also on the traveler, but it does not, it has specific ranges between 3 months a month, etc.
Okay.
Just before we move on, I believe there are other nations we are constantly that was knocking on them for us as well to have this kind of opportunities onto Sierra Leone. But of course, we all know Jamaica to be a very big tourist destination and of course an entertainment hotspot in the Caribbean, if you like. And all of this is also happening in the states at the backdrop of the council. Handing over his letter of credence to President just a week or two. But the question I want to put forward to you is that in terms of Sierra Leone and somebody wanting to go in sort of employment in that part of the world, what is their package?
Now, like I said, the tourism should be categorized as a class A ministry because it also works with labor. And now you're talking about employment. Apart from our local employment, you want to go elsewhere. That is linked with the Ministry of Labor. They look at the work facilities offered there and see how best that can suit Sierra Leoneans to go out to look out for jobs. It's also open to Sierra Leoneans to apply, but you like for Sierra Leone you have to have your work permit or residential permit, and the country also have their own conditions. So in as much as it's open, like I said, for education, for health reasons, for entertainment, etc., but there are conditions you have to fulfill with a view to working there or visiting there.
Okay. Continue to stay with us on the program. He is the Head of Public Affairs and Communication at the Ministry of Tourism and Cultural Affairs, Emmanuel Tui. Well, from there, we take our health tip of today. And today we look at tips how to prevent tension headache. Tension headache are common, but they can often be avoided by managing stress, muscle tightness. Other preventive steps including improving your posture, adjusting your sleeping position, and limiting caffeine and alcohol. Let us watch and learn.
Including high blood pressure and high cholesterol. Your healthcare provider can give tips about the best ways to quit. Number 3, get moving. A sedentary lifestyle increases your risk of developing coronary artery disease. However, exercise helps. Experts recommend walking 30 minutes 5 times per week. Being physically active also helps you shed excess weight, another risk factor. Number 4, reduce and limit your alcohol intake. Excessive drinking can lead to high blood pressure or even damage the heart itself. Women should have no more than 1 drink a day. Men should have no more than 2 drinks daily. Number 5, learn how to manage stress. Stress has a negative impact on heart health. For example, anger and fear can lead to elevated blood pressure, a known risk factor for coronary artery disease. To cope with stress, doctors recommend learning relaxation techniques such as mindfulness or meditation, or incorporating exercise into your daily routine. Number 6, develop healthy habits at a young age. It's never too early to learn about the importance of good nutrition and why certain foods are better for your heart than others. Teaching even young family members about healthy choices, for example, how to recognize the differences between good cholesterol and bad cholesterol, can have a lasting impact. Number 7, take care of your health conditions. Diabetes, high blood pressure, and high cholesterol cause serious health issues if left untreated. This includes coronary artery disease. If you have any of these conditions, be sure to follow your healthcare provider's treatment plans and recommendations. Number 8, see your doctor regularly. Regular checkups are a good way to make sure you're on the right health track. Your doctor may opt to prescribe medicine that helps lower your cholesterol or
Welcome back. Hope we learned a lot from our health tip of today that's to do with how to prevent tension headache. But the program is Good Morning Sierra Leone. We continue. The African Climate Platform has welcomed President Julius Maada Bio's ratification of the protocol establishing the African Court on Human and People's Rights, describing it as a historic milestone in strengthening justice, human rights, and the rule of law. The development comes at the African continent marks the 20th anniversary of the Court's operation, which began in 2006. For more on the importance of Sierra Leone's decision and what it means for human rights and governance, we have been joined in the studio by Mutar Rashid Esquire, is Executive Coordinator, Mother Heart for Climate Justice and Campaigner for Africa Climate Platform. Good morning and welcome to the program.
Good morning.
Okay, so for our viewers to understand, what's the relevance of Sierra Leone signing this, ratifying the protocol on the establishment of the African Court on Human and People's Rights?
Thank you so much for that wonderful question. The protocol to the African Charter on Human and People's Rights for the establishment of an African Court of Human and People's Rights had been signed by Sierra Leone sometime in 1998. And now we see down, many years down, it's now been ratified. So just to correct you, it's the Parliament that ratified the protocol. So the minister laid the paper for it to be ratified, and then the Parliament. For this, we want to say thank you to the executive and also to the legislature for acceding to that. It is important for many reasons. Firstly, it reaffirms Sierra Leone's commitment to upholding continental human rights. It also affirms with confidence among Sierra Leoneans that the country wants to be held accountable at the continental level on human rights issues. So going forward, we want to emphasize that this is just the preliminary stage. We're yet to get to the final stage where the protocol will become binding on Sierra Leone. Sierra Leone has to take another step, which is to deposit the instrument of ratification to the chairman of the African Commission, and then it becomes binding according to Article 34 protocol. And also what we as civil society actors and human rights actors, individuals, wish is for also the government to follow through on Article 34.6, which stipulates that the government should also make a declaration to give competence to NGOs and individuals to directly access the court. Because the problem now we have is that we have to go to the African Commission to access the court, because that instrument has not been deposited and the declaration has not been made. So we further urge the minister to take the next steps. So we commend them for this preliminary step, but we also want to push them further to do what is necessary to give direct access to citizens to the African court.
Now, actually, we saw a week or two ago when this all important legislation was tabled by the Leslie person and the Attorney General of Justice in the Parliament. Now, talk to us some more about, some of the operations, or what are going to be some of the relevance of this African Court on Human and People's Rights.
So, this African Court on Human Rights provides, it's a continental court, so it provides an avenue for better accountability on human rights issues. It's a court dedicated to address human rights issues at the continental level.
Okay.
So, for example, social and economic rights, which are not too justiciable by our constitution, by the African Charter, which provides for several social and economic rights. For example, the right for citizens or Africans to enjoy a safe environment for their development is enshrined in the Charter. So the court can take decisions that will uphold or that will hold government accountable. So you have what we call the duty to protect by every state. Every government has the obligation to protect its citizens. So by this court, if the declaration has been made for direct access, citizens can directly access the court for a decision against the government or against the state to provide facilities that will enhance the enjoyment. For example, as the African Climate Platform, we have now filed a petition before the African Court for the court for an advisory opinion on the obligation of state parties, that is state parties of the African Union. Mind you, this is a continental court and it has to do with member states of the African Union. And all member states, all states of Africa are part of the African Union. So the court has potential for a wider jurisdiction, but being a member of the AU does not automatically make it binding upon you that you are subject to the jurisdiction of the African court. So there are steps, and one of the steps is to sign the protocol and ratify it, which Sierra Leone has now done. So Sierra Leone now is now slowly getting itself under the jurisdiction of the African Court, but it is not yet binding until the ratification instrument is being deposited. So while we are the African Climate Platform, which is a coalition of civil society organizations across Africa working specifically on environmental and climate rights, we are happy for this bold step by Sierra Leone, because it's an example to other nations in Africa, because most of them have refused to ratify this protocol. So Sierra Leone serves as a beacon of hope, as an example to other Africa, to have taken a step forward towards that, and joining other countries like the Gambia, Kenya, Uganda, who have ratified the protocol. So it provides for more accountability for the respect of human rights, and also for the promotion of democratic principles and peace and security in the continent.
Okay, so it took Sierra Leone over 25 years for this to be ratified.
Yes.
So as a civil society organization, what would be your role in ensuring that you push so that this particular protocol can be binding?
So this is what we anticipate, and this is what we really want. We are going to be engaging with the Minister of Justice, because this is a state-led initiative. It cannot come directly from civil society. All we can do is to advocate, and maybe, because you see how long it took. So it took years and years of advocacy for us to move from one step to another. So we have nothing but to use democratic means to advocate, to engage with the Minister of Justice, to push him further, to see that we have to respect human rights in its entirety, and not take one step and then take another donkey years to take the other step. So we are also pushing for him to expeditiously move to the next stage, to deposit the instrument of ratification. Then it becomes binding. On the day it's deposited with the chairman of the African Commission, it becomes binding. But what we want further to that is for NGOs with observer status and individuals, citizens, to have direct access to the court. Because what happens now, for citizens to have direct access to the court, which is the main bone of contention why we civil society are more interested in it, because we have human rights issues that we like to channel straight to the court as human rights lawyers. So we have to go through the African Commission. The African Commission is like the Secretariat of the AU. Yes. So if you want to, you have a complaint, a human rights complaint, you have to send it first to the African Commission to look at it, to see if it has merit, if it's admissible, before you can go now to the African Court. Albeit that you have to exhaust the local remedies. You have to go to the local court system. Except in exceptional cases, for example, like in the case of Kunate versus Burkina Faso, which was a ruling by the African Court in 2014, which gives an exception for not exploring all of the domestic remedies and having access to the court directly, whereby a journalist by the name of Kunate was given the opportunity to directly approach the court on issues of freedom of expression and human rights. So this is why it is important for civil society actors and human rights defenders. We want direct access to this human rights court, because the African Court on Human and People's Rights is a human rights court, just like the Inter-American Court on Human Rights and just like the European Court on Human Rights.
Very good. There you have it. Of course, we must really state that we are having the honor and the privilege to be hosting two lawyers of equal background, I must say. I hope I'm permitted to say that, yes, in terms of human rights perspective, and of course coming from a civil society background. But the question that might emanate from all of these arrangements at continental level, of course I know the Alansan as well will allude to the fact that even at sub-regional level, ECOWAS courts, there have been rulings,
yes,
dozens of them, that civil society organizations have been coming forward to, call on governments to uphold some of these rulings, to ensure that there is implementation of these rulings. That's been a challenge on the part of governments. Now, talking about continental level, we are all seeing at a continental level how the issue of human rights and freedom of expression is being curtailed by many governments across the African region. What is going to be different with the African Court of Human People's Rights?
Good. So, just like that's the problem for international law in terms of enforceability. It's difficult to enforce international court's decision. But nevertheless, that rests with the will of the government. See the government will to implement this decision. But like we see, we had just had the ECOWAS summit. We see that the government at the level, no states behave like human beings. At the level, they want to impress themselves. So being a part of a continental body where there's been example, we are ambitious or we're hopeful that when decisions come from that court, we cannot just close the doors and say because decisions have not been adhered to, we will not institute or seek redress in this mechanism. So we hope that government will be more responsive to this, because one, it has to do with your image as a country that respects human rights. And we see how His Excellency has been projected as a country that respects human rights. So we as civil society can leverage on that and use it, because other African states will now be looking at you and say, oh, you say human rights, but you have not been implementing it. And also, the other mechanism within the AU that can be used, there can be sanctions for not respecting certain human rights. For example, we are more focused on environmental rights, on the obligation and the duty to protect by states, the citizens, as to because we see that climate change is an existential threat. We are being faced on a daily basis with the impacts and ramifications of mining, illegal, dangerous mining activities, pollution. Yes, based on human activities. And we have now gone before the court for the court to issue out an advisory opinion under its jurisdiction, which is not binding really, but it's an advisory opinion explaining to member states what should be their role in terms of protection of environmental rights.
All right, so actually we will continue with that discussion, but I mean that's a similar question I want to put to Lansana Kuruma. Of course, we are all seeing it's no longer a secret across the African region, especially when it has to do with elections. During the electionary processes, you see, ruling governments clamping down on opposition figures. Some are even sent behind bars. Some are even curtailed from even speaking freely or selling their ideologies, their political ideologies to citizens. We see that on a daily basis across the African region. As human rights defenders and civil society advocates, do you think that at continental level and at sub-regional level, we've done enough?
Well, yeah, so we still have a couple of challenges, as colleagues have just said. But of course, that's the challenge, always enforcing international human rights principles or laws. But of course, again, there are several international principles that's the whole on government. If CSOs want to hold them accountable, we can use that. For instance, one of the principles is talking about pacta sunt servanda. The principle of pacta sunt servanda is another international principle that says where you have committed, right? You can use that to hold such leaders accountable based on that commitment. And let's also look at the aspect of, like you said, if you don't go by that, there are other sanctions, there are other remedies that you can face if you're not abiding by them, because it's kind of like a moral obligation. It's not actually, because these are, how do we call them? These are not laws that are actually completely binding.
But we are signatories to some of these international statutory instruments.
I agree, but the enforcement is the problem. Who actually enforces them if they fail? And that's why CSOs, the media, we always try to re-echo those commitments, reminding those leaders.
Maybe that was why Esther was even asking the question as ECOWAS or even AU lived up to the expectations.
So there are certain aspects where actually we must commend that some of those commitments, some have been implemented, but there are others that it's difficult. Like talks about the issue of the courts. The issue of the court sometimes is behold also the individual country. How do you make sure that this action? We saw the case of South One, right, where he went to the ECOWAS courts and that kind of thing, right? A decision was made. Exactly, in his favor. But now it's not behold on the country here to abide by that. That at least this is the decision of the court. How do we make sure that that is working? Because
and sadly enough, we had the chairmanship for a year, and that decision was not looked into. Was that a disappointment?
So again, it's about the willingness of the states, political willingness, and all of this. But of course, the challenges will continue to exist. But as long as our voices, as CSOs and as media, we continue to raise them, I think for a good number of people, they believe a lot of reviews have to be done at that level to see how tangible results can be seen, for situations that have to do with compliance and enforcement and the likes of it.
So aside from concluding with now the ECOWAS 69th organization, you are one civil society activist who is of the opinion that the cabinet reshuffling is long overdue.
Absolutely, it's long overdue. It's really, the citizens are really now calling that the president needs to listen to this. It's long overdue because there are ministers who are just, unnecessarily just wasting resources.
Mr. Kuma, did you do a survey that you were able to tell that citizens are saying they want these cabinet ministers to be reshuffled?
So look, I am a lawyer. Like I said, I know media always asks where is the evidence.
Yeah, because it's based on evidence.
So let's get this clear.
It's your interaction with the people on the
public opinions sometimes can be actions, right, for decisions. Let's understand that. That's why I said, if you want to actually open the Pandora's box, just open the line. And then Victor will not say anything, and now you will listen. In fact, some of them will start naming names that this particular minister, right, has long overdue and is not doing anything absolutely. They will do that. So, I don't want to what I'm just presenting here is that the public are actually now saying there are ministers who are serving in this government who are long overdue, you understand? And that in fact, they have no business being in that cabinet any longer because they are not serving the interest of the people.
You feel this is the pressure that many of them have been going through because there was an incident in Parliament whereby the Energy Ministry was summoned to look into the prolonged energy crisis in Sierra Leone.
And he has been one person that has been advocating for the energy minister to be removed.
But again, the ministry wrote to Parliament citing the ECOWAS media summit that they had to give provide lights for Lungi, so they are not coming.
So these are the tourists. But of course, honestly, let me tell you this: the fact remains here it is clear, completely clear that. A lot of these things were discussed here. The public quite aware that most of these ministers are just kind of, some of them are just bootlicking there. They are honestly, they are just bootlicking. Nothing absolutely coming. I tell you, there are ministers whom I know personally, and I also know. I visit their offices. I go to their offices. I know. But one thing I always want to tell you, as far as I'm concerned, right, I stand here and also to face the test of time that. I am one person who do not believe that lobbying to minister, going to minister, what we want to see is you perform.
And President, you declare this year as a year of action.
Exactly.
Owning up to the action.
Let's go back to their performance contract.
Okay.
Go back. If the chief minister is head of, is the one that is superseding or overseeing their performance contract. If we should ask,
they were underrated. Some ministry says they were underrated in that performance contract.
Okay, so I have not seen the performance contract, but I will tell you for free. If we should ask the Minister of Information or whoever is concerned, or the Chief Minister, to come and read for us the performance contract, it will be abysmal for you. Very abysmal, I will tell you, for some ministers.
Thank you very much, Lawyer Victor Lanson Akoma. He is a civil society activist and a human rights lawyer. Now we still have Mr. Emmanuel Toure in the studio. So I'm still having this visa-free entry for citizens coming from Jamaica and also Sierra Leoneans. What does it mean for the tourism sector as you have been engaging in different activities showcasing Sierra Leone on the global stage?
So basically, I'll just relate that to the just concluded summit, which has opened Sierra Leone. This summit has actually amplified the country's image as a safe, welcoming destination, crucial for attracting regional and international visitors. And also, you may recall His Excellency paid a visit to Bonds Island. That's another motivation for Sierra Leoneans because there are two types of tourism. We have the local for our national tourism here within country and that of international. So both local and international, Bonds Island is a place now most people want to go. If the president has been there, then that means it's so attractive, seeing some artifacts and historical things out there. And so similarly to other parts of the country, it has opened up our country, and we see what the Chief Minister was talking about in terms of employment creation, the expansion of hospitality within the country. But there are few challenges that are experienced.
I was one city who was also expecting, like for example, the Minister of Tourism to must have created a question paper. You know, you will tip that under the desk of the Secretary to really push for tourism like across the sub-region.
Well, basically, that is done at cabinet level. What we are doing now is policy, like you mentioned, we have our performance contract and we have our annual work plans. On an annual basis, we report on what we've achieved, and it's based on those benchmarks that we are rated. So what is currently there, we're looking this year at culture and that of creativity.
All right, thank you very much. I know your ministry is not one of those that is uneasy when the issue of cabinet reshuffle comes up. But that's it. That's where we around the curtains on today's edition of the program. It has been educating, interesting, of course, very much informative. It's Good Morning Sierra Leone, which came to you from the Sierra Leone Broadcasting Corporation Television. The program returns tomorrow. Until then, I'm Dennis Fraser.
And I am Esther Sako. We will take our quote of the day, and it's from Rich's statement, Winston Churchill, and it says, "Success is not final. It is the courage to continue that counts." Well, many thanks to our production crew, especially our producer, Joseph Simon. Thank you to your public service broadcaster, the SLBC, for the very best. Have a wonderful day. Goodbye.
As a mother of the house, whenever I want to prepare palm soup, there's no need pounding palm fruit. All I need is Nkulenu's Ghana's original palm soup base. My soup is done, and its preparation, it is not difficult at all. Nkulenu palm soup base, it's easily done with no difficulties. Just take few ladles and your soup is done. And its flavor, it's amazing. This is Nkulenu's Ghana's original palm soup base. And this is Nkulenu's Ghana's original spiced palm soup base. Iron fruit and turkey berries are naturally added.
Also available Brown Gold Natural Cocoa Powder, Sunny Gold Brown Sugar, Neat Fufu Flour, Shito, Pisa, and Moringa. All available at Nyami Ado Enterprise, 1 Lower Waterloo Street, Freetown.
Nkulenu palm soup base.
Ghanaian original taste.